Fox News alert on one of our top stories today. We have been watching reports coming out of Cincinnati that at least one of the people responsible for the controversy at the IRS targeting conservative groups, one of these guys, was recently promoted. Ben Swann is an anchor for Fox 19 in Cincinnati. He's been investigating this story from the very beginning. Ben, thanks for being here. We were told by Barack Obama that the folks who did this were going to be held responsible, and yet as we get down to the nitty-gritty, who actually did the targeting? Who was actually executing on these IRS letters to these conservative groups? We're learning more about a man named Stephen Siak. Stephen Siak? Tell us.
That's correct. Yeah, well, Stephen Siak is one of the agents from the Exempt Organizations Division that we have uncovered, and his name has shown up particularly in documents targeting the Richmond Tea Party in Virginia. Now, what's interesting about Siak is that when we were able to access an IRS directory, we found that he was actually an exempt organization's manager. He's not just a low-level agent like some of these other agents. So we have at least 7 names, and among those names is Stephen Siak, and he is a manager. Now, the reports that have been out today, though, about this indicate, based on our reporting, that Siak has been recently promoted as recently as when the scandal broke. And we are not sure that that is necessarily the case, because while we have this directory, it does not give us a timeline for when these promotions took place. So we know that Siak helped to target that Richmond, Virginia Tea Party in 2012, but between that date and now, has that the advancement of his career happened within that time frame? And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Well,
I've been talking to my sources
I'm looking at this letter dated January 9, 2012, signed by Stephen Siak,
right.
Exempt Organizations Specialist. And now he
Correct.
is a supervisor. All right, so that was January 2012.
He is a supervisor.
Now he's a supervisor. The point is, and you're not the only one doing the reporting on this, Washington Examiner has the same report out,
Correct.
that the man has been promoted. They contacted the Cincinnati IRS office, who had no comment on when and why the man was promoted. They directed them to Washington. Washington also refused to comment, citing the Privacy Act. The question is, because you've done all this reporting on the charts of people who actually did this. I mean, you're one of the few, unlike the IRS Commissioner, Stephen Miller, who wouldn't name names, who is naming names. Who
Correct.
on this chart that you guys have put together, and I notably see Cindy Thomas at the top, a name that doesn't get mentioned often enough, who's been
almost never
dealt with in any way?
Well, and that's exactly the problem here, is that when we've put together this chart, you can see very clearly a chain of command. And this is where the real problem is that with Stephen Siak, you know, he's, again, one of these agents. But the bottom line is you have agents who are at the very top here. Cindy Thomas is the program manager for all the tax-exempt organizations. So there have been reports out recently, including in this latest lawsuit that was filed, saying that, well, there are agents actually spread out around the country who were taking part in this. Well, that's true to an extent. But here's what people don't understand, is that under the restructuring of the IRS that happened in 1998, every tax-exempt organization specialist answers to Cincinnati. And that means they all answer to Cindy Thomas.
And I want to pick it up with Cindy Thomas right after. I'm going to hold you over because I want to pick it up with Cindy Thomas right after the break, because there's Cindy and then there's Lois, and we'll talk about that next. So Ben Swann is an anchor for Fox 19 in Cincinnati. He has been investigating this IRS deal from the very start. Ben, welcome back. So Cindy Thomas, why don't we hear anything about her? Is anybody looking to talk to her, subpoena her, have her come on Capitol Hill after Lois Lerner, her boss, took the fifth?
Well, you know, her boss took the fifth, and we have been doing all this reporting, as you mentioned, about Cindy Thomas, who she is and how she's connected to the scandal, and yet she hasn't been called before Congress. I talked to Congressman Brad Winstrup this week. He says that he actually took our reports to members of the Ways and Means Committee and showed them those reports, saying, you need to call this woman up to testify. Because, look, what your viewers have to understand is that the way the IRS system works, if you have an application for a nonprofit group and it goes to the IRS, it has 9 months or 270 days where a decision has to be made, either to reject that application or approve it. If it doesn't happen, Megan, then every single month there is a system-generated red flag that will pop up, and it's sent all the way to Cindy Thomas's office. Well, there are 300 groups targeted out of Cincinnati at least. 18 months they're sitting in the system, some as long as 3 years, which means at the minimum we're talking 5,000 to 10,000 system-generated flags over the course of 2010 to 2012. There's no way she didn't know.
She knew. And then there's a question about whether she came up with it, though. Is she high enough on the totem pole to have been the orchestrator of this scheme, or would it have to have gone higher?
Well, as you all have reported, though, even as recently as 2012, Lois Lerner was helping to sign off on cover letters of documents that were going back to these groups, continuing to ask Tea Party and conservative groups for this inappropriate information. So we know that Lois Lerner was aware of it, and we know that Cindy Thomas, through the reporting that we've done, is very closely connected to Lois Lerner. In that chart that we have, they're separated by one position, essentially, but from the sources that we have, we've heard that they're very close and very tight, and there's no way Cindy Thomas was doing all of this, again, with these automated system flags being generated without Lois Lerner knowing. There's no way that could have happened.
We need to hear from Cindy Thomas. Ben, thanks.